everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week I am going to be continuing on with my 1890s silk evening gown, which you can see half of behind me right there. When we left off last week, that was where we're at. We have the outer silk layer pinned all in place with its little pleats and everything onto one side of the bodice. I still have to do that same sort of thing on the other crossover side of the bodice, but the first thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making the little inset piece that goes in right here and also crosses over, and that is going to get ruched organza applied to it. So after pressing this all, I'm going to sew lines of gathering across this and then gather that up and fit it to this piece right here, and hopefully that will work for the little crossover section. I will try it out, I think, before like finishing these edges, but yeah, that will be the next step here. Here you can see all of my lines of gathering. They are spaced 1.5 inches apart. And what I'm going to do now is just pull them up and see how dense I want this. I did make this 3 times as long as the larger portion of this triangle. So I have lots to play with. I don't think I'm going to want it that densely gathered, but who knows? As you can see, it's all gathered up now. I do feel like it's very puffy and springy. Like it doesn't want to stay flat at all. It just keeps puffing up. And I feel like hers is a little flatter. She also has kind of a ruffle right up at the top and almost like a straight band below that. Like there's something solid maybe below that. And I'm almost wondering, I hadn't intended it this way, but I do have the selvage edge right here. Now, I do kind of feel like it looks like a selvage, but I do wonder about maybe I should finish this bit first and then have this peek over the edge and maybe put like some lace behind it and actually use this ruffled selvage edge. It's a possibility, I'm not sure. And maybe put like a band of, if I have it, like a little bias strip or something of some white silk below. That could be an option. But I do have to figure out, like, do I want to press this down or something? Because it's very, very puffy. Okay, so here's what's going on. I've decided to make this piece 2 layers. So this was the twill that I had before. There's actually some silk taffeta under here that I had tiny scraps of, like super tiny scraps of, and I decided to cut that from here. I'm probably going to do a little strip, like a bias strip of the silk taffeta as well, just to kind of get that look. But I have put this onto the silk taffeta because it didn't have enough like luster, basically. It just looked really plain and flat with this, and also not structured enough. So yeah, this is what this is looking like right now. I have pulled up all of these gathers and tried to kind of distribute them evenly, and then I also gave them a super light steam press with the iron. So basically not pressing into the fabric, but gently gliding over and releasing steam, which has helped to compress these. You can see it's not so buoyant as it was before. I do feel like there's some of these that I want to maybe press a little better / less crooked, but yeah. And then I've pinned around the outside to the silk taffeta. What I did first though was I actually put right sides together and I did this seam. So that's why they're connected right now. And that's because I am going to leave that selvage edge up here. I think it looks pretty nice, honestly, and it gives a nice little ruffled top effect. But these parts right here, I am now going to baste around the outside, cut off the excess, and then attempt to put this bit right sides together, leaving like a gap that I can turn it out from. And hopefully that will give me sort of an encased bit right here that I can then put into the neckline. Here we go. I used my little bias tape maker and took a 1-inch strip on the bias of ivory or white, silk, whatever the base is of this. And I pressed my little 1/2 inch wide bias, and I'm going to attempt to wait to actually sew this on until later because this is hand sewing. I'd love to do all the hand sewing like when I go to California, but I am now going to sandwich the sides and hopefully the pins will keep this in place. Oh, also, as I was cutting off all of the excess, I really carefully pulled out threads that were long enough to tie knots, kept them away from where I was cutting, like folded them in this way cut the edges off, and then tied the front and back side together, Dora, of all of these so that I could make sure that these parts in here didn't come undone, because I am not stitching these bits down. At least I don't want to, because that's going to compress things even further and I just don't want that look. So by tying all my knots, all of the ruching will hopefully stay in place. And since Dora wants to be on camera again, there's Dora. Well, here's our little centerpiece done, except for stitching on that bit and like closures and stuff. We do obviously have to fit it in here because it's going to be underneath this little bit right here. However, before we can really put it in place, I think probably we need to do the neckline binding. I'm torn on that, to be honest, because I worry that by binding this area right here, it could potentially close off where the corner needs to go in here. But yeah, I feel like we probably need to bind it. To be honest, I think what really needs to happen is I need to do the other side of like doing all of this bit on the other side, and then try everything on by just pinning this in to make sure that this even will work. And then I can probably bind off now that I've done, you know, all of that. So I'm trying to figure out right now how to pattern the structure layer that is going to be the crossover section, because the pleated section is going to be based on top of like another one of these, I think probably, that is going to go a lot farther. However, I didn't mark on this one what the crossover section looks like. I marked it on this one, and granted, I think those marks are still visible from the inside, but I'm not really sure how to translate that into something flat at this point, because especially since that already has the darts in it. So yeah, I need it to go like that basically, and I need it to do that over here. And I think that means to basically take a dart out of the center front, like cut this on the fold flat, and then have the structure layer have a dart that is this curve section, and just have it continue down to there, probably with some of the bits of darts on the other side as well. So I have to figure that out. Though it also dawned on me, would that mean that I would kind of need to cut this entire section of the bodice double, like 2 structure layers plus the purple layer? Or maybe could the structure layer that's underneath actually start like here-ish and be attached to this layer here-ish, so we only get the 1 layer there, and then we get 2 layers here, and that way this can have its own closure with its own facing underneath, and then from here over we get that other layer. So we do probably have the dart of structure there, part of the darts that it would be mirrored over here. I think that's going to be the answer, and we just attach that other one here, because otherwise we're going to have a weirdly bulky strap and like side front on this side and not on the other side. So yeah, that makes sense. So I just drew the line in that is this line where it's like already done, but this one has the dart still open, and it looks really, really funky. And I'm wondering if it's honestly even necessary that this side does have darts, especially this dart, because it's so short. I feel like it's probably not necessary, and that I could probably just kind of continue it down like that. But I'm not sure, so I might just do the darts anyway and do like a little mock-up of the other side, or of the side that is going to attach here and then cross over there, because I can't do my like purple silk pleats for this side until I figure out the structure. So I put the facing on this side because I realized that if I still had the seam allowance over here, then that would be like excess and I'd have to fold it back and out of the way. So this basically does that for me. But then it dawned on me, maybe the base layer that is this bit should not be the part that goes with the strap. Maybe the part that comes all the way across should be the strap, or maybe it doesn't matter whatsoever. But if I do the part with the strap and like the part that goes all the way across, have that be the layer that the purple gets mounted directly onto, then that means that this could go like after. No, but it couldn't go after, because then I wouldn't be able to sew it by machine all the way through, and machine sewing would be sturdier. So I feel like no matter what, I'm going to have to work with this all as one piece and just make sure that my purple doesn't actually go through to the base layer over here. Oh my God, you guys, this is so confusing. Why is this so confusing? So I think that this very weird shape winds up being the pattern that I'm going for, or at least that I'm going to attempt, I don't know if this is going to work at all, but basically this dotted line lines up with the edge of the dart, and this goes a 1/2 inch past the dart. That way I can like sew on the dotted line and probably just serge this edge because it's all underneath and no one's going to see it. And then right here, this is going to be a dart. I'm going to fold on this edge and stitch on this curve. And then we've got this really weird dart there and this really weird dart there that I probably don't need those to be darts, but here we are. If I can figure out how to just like condense that smaller, I probably will, honestly. Yeah, I can definitely condense this out of there just by folding and matching up my dart lines and then replacing like these lines underneath here so it winds up just being there. I think that will work a lot better. Or I could just lay this down on here because it's already put together and just trace it. So there we go. There's my new piece. This is the weird shape of that like extension piece. Now I have to mount this on top of the other side and then attempt to do the purple that goes all the way across. So I think this is kind of what the shape looks like here. I'm going to stitch down here along the edge, and then this is that flat bit that flaps over. This facing is going to get stitched by hand. So now that I'm looking at this, I've just pinned this on the wrong side. Fun. Okay, this is meant to go on the other side because this shiny side is the side that goes against the body. So I'm going to repin that where it's actually meant to go, and then I'm going to stitch it down. Glad I caught it before I stitched it. That's better. Now it's the right way around, and now we can attempt to put the purple silk across this whole shape. Well, it's one less pleat on this side than it was on the other side, but surprisingly that doesn't bother me. I just had the other side on there while I was doing all these pleats. I think it actually looks really nice. The point of the bodice comes to just about here. I debated adding one more pleat, but where this pleat is going, this part here actually lines up with where the bottom pleat is on the other side. So I think it's pretty well balanced, and I think because they cross over each other, I don't think it's weird that one side has more pleats than the other. So yeah, I think that seems honestly pretty good. So I'm going to take this off the form and, like I showed you in the last video, kind of do the loose cut around, giving myself like a 1-inch margin around everywhere, and then make sure that everything's laying nice and smoothly, and then go in and cut it so that it lines up with the bodice piece underneath and serge those edges like I did on the other one. And yeah, I think that side is a success. And here it is with all of the edges cut off and serged. So you can kind of see how this will work. Basically, this part right here is going to be stitched down underneath where I have that pinned right now, but it'll be stitched under there, and then it will come over and close over here with some hooks, and then this bit will come across without catching on itself, but they're so full of pins that that's what's happening. So it will come across like that and do that little crossover bit. So that's how that's going to work. Now the next step is, despite this being so full of pins, I really need to try this on to make sure everything's going to work. So I'm going to attach the front sides to the back and then like kind of try to put this on. Again, full of pins, no hooks or anything yet, but I just need to do that before I can put all of this together or before I can do any binding or anything like that. And I also have to figure out how the pinned part, like all of the pleats and everything, how that's meant to stay put. So before I even worry about the centerpiece fitting in, I wanted to check the fit of the bodice, and something that I was kind of a little bit nervous about happening did in fact happen, which is that in putting the silk portions over the cotton portion, whether it is because cotton just has a little bit of stretch to it, period, and silk does not, or whether it's because as I was putting them together with the pleats, the cotton kind of wound up shrinking just a little bit. It is a little bit tight. So now I have just eaten dinner, so that could definitely be part of it as well. But I had to pull the cotton quite a bit to get it to close center front. It did. Like, it's pinned all center front. Basically, I folded out one of the facings and pinned the other side, this side right here, to where that seam is on this side. So it is pinned all in place. However, what can't stretch is this layer right here because it is so silk. It's silk and it's got stay stitching and it's got serging. It doesn't move anywhere. So what I've noticed, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on camera, but what I've noticed is in pulling this over, the point is not quite lining up, which was kind of my worry before. That's why initially I had that idea of making the under layer not have the point and just having the point on the over layer. And I think that that is the right idea. At the very least, I think I'm going to just kind of narrow and shorten the underneath so that it will still have a little bit of a point just for like extra support. I don't think I need it, but like just for extra support, it will still have a little bit of a point, but it won't have the full point of the bottom because that way I don't have to worry about lining them up. So that way this can go where it needs to. The point can just become right there. So it might be just that tiny bit off from what is actual center, but I don't think that it will be noticeable at all because this bodice is asymmetrical. Like, it's okay. The other thing though that I am noticing as I'm wearing it and talking to you here is that although this shoulder I think still feels good, it feels nice and tight, this one, maybe because it's so interconnected, etc., it just feels a little bit loose, like it's a little too tall. Look at that. We can take some of that out of there. So yeah, I need to take that up. It's not in the armscye side, it's just in the shoulder. So maybe my stay stitching wasn't good enough. I did stay stitch this side, but it's biased. Like stay stitch is not the answer for everything. So it probably stretched just a little bit. So I just need to take a little bit out of this front, probably about 1/2 inch of just the front portion right there and just redo that shoulder seam. That's no problem at all. So now what that means is I need to fit this piece right here. So I'm going to unpin this top little pleat section, hopefully be able to just shove that in, and hopefully it will fit like it's supposed to. So we're close, but we are a little bit off. And the main issue here is that it's just too wide at the top, like too widely pointy. I should have curved it in more up at the top. I think that that's something that I can just like undo the stitches that I did, cut off a bit, fold it, and just like whip stitch it. Like honestly, it doesn't even have to be a nice edge. This side ideally would be a nice edge because that is the like finished part. This side actually has room to just go farther. So I don't know if you can tell this at all, but basically the edge of the point underneath is all the way over here, whereas like the edge of this part is here. So we have that nice little like 1/2 inch that I was going for here, and we have like, I don't know, 1.25 inches or something like that going out that way. I totally just scratched myself, but going out that way. So it's just too pointy on the sides, and the problem over here is that there's no room for that point to go. So I have to make this one smaller. Again, should not be a big deal. It just will involve some like hand whip stitching and, you know, cutting off all that excess. But the rest of it I think is good. Like, I think it's looking good. I think it's fitting well. There's so much binding that's going to have to be done. So what I'm going to do tonight, besides cutting off that little bit and fixing the point parts on that, is that I am going to cut lots and lots of bias strips of the purple because A, I don't think I have any pre-made bias tape in anything remotely this color, and B, I need a lot of it. So even if I have like a package, I don't think that's enough because I need to bind the whole bottom, but part of the bottom, like the whole front part, is going to be twice. So like from here all the way around plus this part, I need to bind this going across. I need to bind the whole neckline, and then also this under neckline, which I probably won't do with the purple, but yeah, there's a lot of binding. So my goal, because tonight is my last night before I go down to visit my parents, so my goal is that in the next like hour or so, I can make all of that binding and attach the one side with the machine and get it pressed into place, because that way I can do lots of hand sewing on the plane and when I'm at their house, just like sitting around watching TV with them. So yeah, hopefully I can get all that done. Even as is though, I do still have a lot of hand sewing to do because I have the facings to whip stitch plus all of the hooks and bars down in the center. But ideally I would like to, or hooks and eyes actually with this one, ideally I would like to be able to do that after I finish all of the binding. So I'm gonna stop talking and go make binding for ages. If you've never used a bias tape maker before, I highly recommend that you give one a try. This one right here makes the sort of 1/2 inch wide bias tape that you can buy at the store, and you cut your fabric about 1 inch to 1 1/8 inch wide strips of bias fabric, and then you just run your iron next to this little bias tape maker like this. I like to use a good bit of steam, and you wind up with beautifully pressed bias. Ta-da! This is what it looks like. There's lots of sizes available. I have like 3 or 4, and they are fantastic. Binding is all on and pinned in place, and I'm ready to take this with me to California for a ton of hand sewing. Honestly, I'm not going to bother bringing you guys along because this is going to take me a lot of work and it's not interesting. So I'll check back in with you at the end of this video when all of this is done. So I did not get all of the hand sewing done while I was in California, but I did get most of it done. So as you can see, all of the binding is done everywhere in here. That's all sewn down by hand. And then I have hooks almost everywhere. So we have hooks all the way up this cross front piece here, also all the way down the center right here. I also have my eyes down here. I had actually forgotten to bring eyes with me to California. I only had bars, so I had to do that today when I got home. And these come together here. Now, I wasn't really sure. I did sew this down, this side right here, but I just kind of had my doubts after marking this about, was this supposed to be where it overlapped, or was this supposed to actually be the edge? So although this is all sewn up and shortened like it was all the way out to the side there, I just wasn't sure if this was where it was meant to be, because it seemed like once I did do up the hooks and bars here, like there was too much to go across. So I think I want to try this on one more time and see. Likewise, I did start to do one thread bar here because I was kind of feeling like the actual bars were going to be too obvious, but I want to try it on and just double check the placement of the others before I mark everything and sew them all on. So let's go ahead and put this on one more time for this week's video. So unfortunately, I was right. That pink line that I had drawn on here was in fact the edge line, not the overlap line, and I need to make this little corner up here a little bit smaller. So I'm glad that I caught that now and that I didn't go and put a bunch of hooks on there that couldn't hook to anything. So I am going to redraw in that line, and that way I can make that smaller. For now though, I can pin this section over on top just to mark where everything goes. So I'm going to do that right now. And here we go. Here is the bodice with just a couple of pins holding this crossover in place. Honestly, I probably overdid it on how many hooks that I put on, because I spaced my hooks 2 inches apart all the way across this. And right now I have the little thread bar right here, and I have one pin here. I think that's it. I think that's all the pins that are holding this shut right now. So I guess I overdid it a little, but that's okay. I'm still gonna put the bars on. So I'm gonna mark where each of those bars are. I think I am going to do the metal bars across here instead of the thread bars, but I'm not positive. However, I think that may be a decision for my next video, because it's actually Wednesday right now, so we are way too far into this week. But I didn't get back from my trip down to my parents until technically Tuesday in the early hours of the morning, and I have now edited the rest of this video except for these last little clips here. So yeah, I'm happy with how this is, and frankly, other than putting on those couple of closures and fixing that little overlap bit right there, next week, we're going to be starting with the sleeves and then finishing off this bodice and hopefully moving on to the ruffle of the skirt and to the day bodice. So I'm very, very excited to get back to those. And maybe by the time I finish the sleeves, the museum will actually send me additional pictures, because they have now told me, they have been telling me for a week, I think at this point, that they've taken the pictures, but haven't bothered to actually send them to me, which, you know, not helpful. So I'm hoping that they will be helpful, and by the time you'll be seeing this, hopefully they will have actually sent me more pictures. Anyway, again, that's going to be it for this week. I'm really liking this evening bodice. I'm very excited to wear it to the ball. I will link all of the ball information down in the description below, because by the time you're seeing this, hopefully there'll still be a chance to get tickets if you are intending to come. I think as of a couple of days ago, there were only 10 tickets left to the ball on Friday night, though I believe there is still availability for the rest of the Victorian Festival. So I will link all of that info down below. Dora is doing well, by the way. I know that she is just off camera here, or barely on camera here, and you can see her in her cone, or in her flower cone, which is working out really well, and she gets to have this off hopefully on Saturday. On the other hand, I leave in about a half hour to go pick up Lion from his surgery, so apparently he is doing well, but he is going to have a long recovery road ahead of him, so please keep him in your thoughts. And thank you so much to all of you who have donated to the GoFundMe or joined Patreon or everything like that. You guys have just absolutely blown me away with your response. It's incredible. Like, I never thought that you guys would be able to help me cover this much. At this point, almost half of all of the vet bills between Lion and Dora in the last couple months, almost half of them are covered, which is just absolutely incredible. So thank you so much. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I'm just at a loss for words. This is incredible. Thank you so much. Anyway, that is going to be it for me for this week. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and sometimes additional content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean, Dan, and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!